Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, November 12th, 2019, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2020 Republican Party presidential primaries. Now, I'm not going to be focusing too much on the overall primaries mainly. I shouldn't have started off the video by saying that, but today, I guess the only candidate that was running, one of the only candidates, that was running, Mark Sanford dropped out and suspended his campaign for president of the United States. He was running as a Republican. If you're not sure who he was, pretty much this was a representative who had a personal vendetta against the president. President Donald Trump had endorsed another candidate against this guy, Mark Sanford, in South Carolina's 1st congressional district. And in that primary election, this incumbent representative actually lost. It wasn't a large margin. It was a narrow defeat. But at the same time, when you're defeated as an incumbent who's been in this case, between 1995 to 2001, who was a governor of South Carolina, moving on to back to the representative position, this president really screwed up his entire political career. Unfortunately for the Republican there that defeated Mark Sanford, they did not go on to win the general election. South Carolina's 1st district is now a Democratic district in terms of the House representative seat. But Mark Sanford, well, President Trump endorsed the opposition candidate. Now, that definitely has an effect in an area where President Trump definitely was liked in the 2016 Republican primaries. Mark Sanford, the only reason why he would run against Donald Trump is to get back at him. And yes, that makes sense in a way. I could see this being out of spite. Obviously, Sanford had no real shot at the presidency. And considering that you're dropping out this early on, it didn't really seem like he was too invested on it anyway. Other candidates who at this time, again, may not seem like they have a chance. Number one, it's going to be really hard to take down an incumbent president. But at the same time, there is a little bit, I guess, better of an image for you if you stay in the race, even though you may not be a U.S. representative or someone like that. And at the same time, Mark Sanford withdrawing from the primary, again, this does not have that many national implications. He wasn't exactly the only opposition candidate to President Trump, nor was he the most favored. And to be completely honest, most of you probably didn't know who Mark Sanford was until I made this video. And that makes sense. He's running against an incumbent Republican president. We're at a time where Donald Trump's approval rating amongst the American people may be low, but amongst Republicans is pretty high. So it really does make sense that he wouldn't continue with this campaign for being the way that he was. And also, he definitely was going to eventually run out of money. Sanford didn't exactly have too much money to his name, even though he was a U.S. representative. But the declared major candidates, and then we have a couple candidates down here as well. Pretty much, I'll just read them off. We have Donald Trump, of course, Joe Walsh, Bill Weld, Rocky De La Fuente, Bobby Eli Zoltan. Okay, I recognize that name from 2016. So not on the ballot anywhere. So those people really aren't going to be too notable. On the ballot at least one state, those two, and then on the ballot in at least 5 states. So I guess, actually, if you look at some of the states here in the Republican primary, Rocky De La Fuente is actually on some of the ballots that we don't see Bill Weld on, or some other candidates. Even though they may be considered more notable than him, they aren't exactly on the ballot either. So it wouldn't necessarily say that they have the best shot for the nomination if you take Trump out of the equation. But overall, let's just take a look at some of these candidates that are running against President Trump. We have Joe Walsh, a U.S. representative from Illinois' 8th district, actually only in for, 2 years? 2010 election. Lost 2012 or just stopped. Ended up being a conservative talk radio host. Bill Weld ran with Gary Johnson back in 2016. There was that Johnson-Weld campaign back in 2016, like I just said. And now Weld is going over to the Republican Party and now running. He was a Republican. He's a governor of Massachusetts. U.S. Senate candidate in 1996. I want to see how that turned out. I guess he lost. Yeah, he did against John Kerry. Okay, that makes sense. But actually just stopped being governor. Must have been pretty popular too. Whatever. But now Bill Weld is running for president. Rocky De La Fuente, businessman, America Delta, and reform nominee for president in 2016. Bob Eli, entrepreneur from Illinois. Zoltan Istvan, if that goes away, transhumanist activist from California. So we don't have exactly the top tier that we saw back in 2016. Obviously, there were a lot more candidates, a lot of senators, a lot of representatives. And in terms of the overall Republican Party nomination, obviously Donald Trump is at a huge advantage being the incumbent. We've never actually seen a an incumbent president primaried in a general election. And I'm not going to say that this is the most likely scenario for President Trump, but in a case where he would be, let's say, impeached and removed from office, which is probably not going to happen considering the United States Senate is already in favor of the Republicans and you need practically a supermajority for that. Whole other issue. For this case specifically, if, let's say, Trump was impeached and removed from office, you definitely could see a lot more candidates jumping in the race. But again, if the Democrats somehow pull it off past the primary season, we could likely see these remaining candidates here that are on the ballots in some of these states face off for the actual rise to the presidency. But Mark Sanford, again, I don't think that this has too many implications nationwide. It's just a headline that I thought I'd cover. Didn't really mean much to me personally. I never really invested too much time into looking into who he was personally as a candidate, mainly because I personally thought that he was only running out of spite, and it really just seemed like that, to be completely honest. He calls himself a financial conservative in that logo there. I mean, aren't they all? And, you know, it's not going to change that much. He announced September 8th. It's literally been 2 months, and he's already out. So, again, not much here. Let's take a look at his campaign real quick. Not much here. Okay. After failing to gain traction in the race, Sanford ended his bid. He blamed, that's interesting, the ongoing impeachment inquiry, saying that it has made my goal of making the debt deficit and spending issue part of his presidential debate impossible now. Nearly everything in the Republican Party politics is currently viewed through the prism of impeachment. Okay, I mean, that makes sense, but that's not, okay. Let's see, so, road trip, which started in Philadelphia, only one person, a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer, showed up. The road trip was called Kids Were Bankrupt, but we didn't even know it. And Sanford holding a large check for $1 trillion that would spark a needed conversation within the Republican Party about spending and debt. So it seemed like this guy sort of tried to start this off as that you'd start off any other political campaign. But to be honest, this doesn't seem like he was pushing the hardest. I want to see if he took down his website over here. No, why I'm running. Does he have a store? It'd be interesting if he had a store. But anyways, so again, we should see maybe one or two candidates pop into the Republican Party and pop out by the time we reach the primary season. We're not going to see any notable, quote-unquote, notable candidates. Larry Hogan said that he was not running. I haven't heard about Carly Fiorina or Jeff Flake. Jeff Flake probably isn't running. There isn't too many candidates that could pop in this race and automatically take over away from the president. But again, anything can happen in this day and age, to be completely honest. And if we're looking at the remaining, I guess, top 4 candidates now, I guess Donald Trump, Joe Walsh, Bill Weld, Rocky De La Fuente, because he's on the ballot in at least 5 states. I guess you could say that these 4 candidates, more than 100 others, okay, whatever, those are the top 4 for the Republican nomination, but obviously President Trump had an advantage. To be honest, I haven't really heard much about Joe Walsh recently. Bill Weld only pops in every so often when he's pretty outspoken against the president. A lot of these candidates really do need to go ahead and end up getting on national television, actually getting out there, because the most we've seen about our Republican primary is probably today when Mark Sanford decided to withdraw his bid for the nomination against President Trump. And this isn't too uncommon. There are candidates that do run against incumbent President Barack Obama. Saw some opposition. I think a candidate in Oklahoma's Democratic primary got like 18% of the vote. But generally, these nominations actually go on to be uncontested at the national convention. But if we look at some of these states, they're actually getting rid of the primaries, which I find pretty interesting. They're not holding them. They cite saving money. But typically they do hold the primary, and it's usually understood that the incumbent president typically wins, but at the same time, there is always that possibility. I'm trying to see which states have actually gotten rid of their primaries here. I think it might have maybe Colorado. I'm not sure, but I know there are some states that have done that. So decline to be candidates. I want to see if Carly Fiorina is on here. A lot of these candidates or former candidates are not running, but obviously that makes sense. There's no reason why they would run for president. Again, Rand Paul, Mike Pence. Why would you make whatever? Ted Cruz. Let's see. Chris Christie, Steve Bannon, a lot of these candidates, Nikki Haley, Marco Rubio, Paul Ryan. I haven't heard his name in a while. Scott Walker, whatever. Yeah, so these are the candidates that have declined to run for the nomination. They probably weren't going to have too good at a shot looking at some of these candidates soon. They probably run out of money very quickly as well. So, yeah, that was just the overall headline today that Mark Sanford had dropped out. I wanted to also discuss my future uploading schedule for the remainder of this month. I do have some videos coming up. I'm going to be discussing, I'll just keep it a little vague so you can actually see it when the video comes out, but it'll be something pertaining to Democrats tomorrow, then an election night between Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump, then I'll cover the Louisiana governor election. That's this Friday, so probably final thoughts before the actual election overview, rundown of recent Democratic primary data, that's an overview of the state by state and what's going to happen there, then a Democratic update, and then I haven't figured it out further than that, but we should see a balance between, I guess, Senate, House, 2020 election, Dems, and Republican primary. So that should be pretty interesting. So thank you guys for watching this video. Comment down suggestions below, and I will see you all tomorrow.